Hi there, I'm Construction Gamer, and this is a bus tutorial for Transport Fever 2. This is something I've been thinking about making for a while now, but David in the comments of another video said he was having a little bit of trouble with his bus routes and wanted to see me do something, a little bit of an explainer about different bus routes and whatnot. So I thought I'd go ahead and make an actual tutorial. So we're going to start at the very beginning on how to set up a bus route, but don't worry, if you want to see the more advanced things that we're going to talk about later on, I will put timestamps in the description below, so you can just skip forward, because basically I'm going to start with setting up a bus route just in case anyone's watching this video and they're playing Transport Fever for the first time, let's say, and they don't know yet how to set up a functioning bus route. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about the different types of bus routes. So I'm going to cover intercity, I'm going to cover shuttle buses within a city, and what I call a hybrid as well. But I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go on. And within those different types, there are point-to-point, which is my favourite, and then there are loops as well. So I'll talk a little bit about why I prefer point-to-point than loops, and basically talk about the different types of bus routes you can have set up. So the first thing we're actually going to do is we're going to set up a bus route. Now we're on my high-speed test map. This is the one I used for the experiment, where I experimented with different types of vehicles and basically how far people are willing to travel. And as you'll see, this map is absolutely enormous. But I'm just going to start down here at the very bottom, where we've got two towns which aren't currently connected. This is a relatively short journey. You will find the journeys, if you're playing on a real map, obviously will be a bit longer. But what we're going to do, first things first, is we're going to delete this bus depot just so I can build another one and show you. Just basically want to start from the very start. Yeah, that's the one. And we're going to go to vehicles down here, or the road menu rather. We're going to click on buildings, and we're going to click on bus tram station, and we're just going to plop that in there. Now what we want to look out for is, you will see those blue markers which have forever hence been called tendrils, after a kernel failure coined the phrase. So you will see there tendrils starting to appear, and that just all that does is just allows pedestrian access to the bus station. So for example, if somebody is walking from this building, they don't have to walk all the way down and all the way to the top. They can just use this little tendril here, this connection, and it just cuts down the walking time to the bus station, because journey times are a huge factor within this. So you want your bus station to have the best connectivity as possible. Now if you're just starting out and this is your first intercity bus station, the town probably will be a lot smaller, so it is easier to cover a bigger area as possible. But if you click on the bus station you've just placed, you will see all of the buildings in white are within walking distance of, or in theory within walking distance of, the bus station. If people are willing to walk that far is a different thing entirely, but in theory people are able to walk from all of these buildings in white to the bus station. So you want your bus station to be in the centre of any town or city. What we're doing now is a point-to-point, so the buses will just come into the city, go into the bus station or bus stop, turn around and head back out the city. So this is the best way to do it, because this bus station allows somewhere for the bus to turn around basically. But there is another way to do it. Let's see, I've done it here, but we'll do it again. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to upgrade this, so we're going to go to one-way road, bus lane no, and we're just going to have like a loop in the middle of the city, and this will just be somewhere where buses can come in, turn around and drive back out of the city to go to the other destination. And then on it we're going to put a bus stop, just like that, nice and simple. And you'll see if we click on this bus stop it should have a reasonably good coverage. Yeah, I've designed these cities so they are as compact as possible, and they do have pretty good coverage of everything, so that's good. Next thing is we want to connect these two cities up. Now what you'll find in general, if you're starting with a brand new map, let's say, it will have a usually dirt road connecting the two of them like that. It should do at least anyway if the map's been designed correctly. So the town should be connected up, and if you're starting very early on in the game, you might even be starting in 1850 or it's 1890, and you'll only have access to horse and cart. So basically the speed of the road shouldn't matter too much. But before I get into that, we're just going to set up a route. So we're going to click down here, line manager, and we're going to go new line. We're going to click on the icon there for the bus station, and then we're going to click on the bus stop, and that's it. They're connected together now, those two cities. So we're going to go intercity, and then just whatever town is there. Doesn't matter, you can pick your own naming convention. Well, basically that is it. That is the most basic bus setup in city, point to point. Bus comes in, turns around, goes to the other city. Now, as the game progresses, you're going to want to start worrying about the speed of a road. I don't think really you need to start worrying until about 1940, 1950, because the top speed of this dirt track is about 50 anyway. But later on, as you get more modern buses, I reckon about 1950, 1960, when buses start to get a little bit faster, then you might want to start considering upgrading this road. Now we do that by clicking on roads, and then we click on the wand here, and we can upgrade this to something like this. I am using UK roads though, just to be aware, so your roads might look slightly different than they do on here, but relatively similar. And if you go to that, we've got an asphalt road in this particular instance, and we're going to upgrade this like that. So now we've upgraded this road, but what that has done as well is it means we've taken ownership of this road by upgrading it to a country road. What that basically means is we own it. The AI cannot build on it, it cannot connect roads, it cannot build houses as far as I'm aware. But what that does mean is we have to pay for this road and pay for the upkeep of the road. So it depends on how you're budgeting, if you want to pay for this road or not. I think you can get away with not owning this road, so we're going to go into that. So we're going to go to this layer option up here. We're going to click on the two vehicles, street traffic layer, like so. And we're just going to click on these padlocks. So if they're grey, that means we don't own it, we're not paying for the upkeep of the road, but the AI has free reign and can do whatever it wants. It can upgrade, downgrade, whatever. Now I would suggest, if you want to keep your budget as tight as possible, just taking ownership of the roads closest to the town, because the AI doesn't generally, until the city starts getting really big, doesn't really start building further out than this. So maybe, you know, if you do want to really tighten your belt, tighten the budget, then just own the very first part of the road. But it does mean you've got to go and unlock or lock each of the segments manually, which is a little bit of a problem. But if, let's say for example, we had a dirt track like this, we wouldn't own this usually to start with, but if we want to upgrade it and take ownership of it simultaneously, we can just upgrade it, and that is just a quick way to take ownership of the road. What you can actually do is, if it's already, let's say for example, it's already an asphalt road, what we can do, if it's already an asphalt road and we don't own it, what we can do is downgrade it first and then upgrade it, and that will mean we take ownership of that road. And that works for motorways, highways and country roads, but doesn't work for urban roads. Basically, if we upgrade urban roads within a city, we don't take ownership of them, because otherwise the AI wouldn't be able to build within the limits of the city. So there we are, we've got our basic route, we've upgraded the road, so the new buses that we're going to use are going to go as fast as possible, because journey times have a big impact on the amount of people who want to use them and the profit you make. Obviously, the faster people get from point A to point B, the more profit you will make on a particular route for a given vehicle. In order for us to build a vehicle, we're going to go to buildings in the road menu, we're going to click on road depot, and usually if I'm doing a point to point intercity route, I will put the bus depot smack bang in the middle of the two cities. Now obviously we have to pay maintenance for the road depot as well, so you don't want to be building loads of these. Maybe you can go ahead and delete them when you've finished, but generally it's just so much easier just to build it smack bang in the middle. And that's because once we go to buy our vehicles, I'm going to buy a vanilla vehicle, or 4 vanilla vehicles, a Maz 103. So I'm going to go ahead and buy 4 of those, and what we're going to do is I'm going to put the maintenance to 25%. That's just something I do across the board, because it just stops the emissions or the noise of the vehicles going up over time too much. I mean, they will go up as the vehicle deteriorates, but it just means you won't get that message later on saying vehicle conditions of X vehicle is poor. This will mean your vehicles are always in a mediocre state. You can put it to very high, but in general, just if you put it up to very high, your running costs go up by 50%. High is just 25%. I think high is a good balance of over cost versus the actual state of your vehicle. So I'm going to apply that to those, and then this line is blue, so I'm going to paint them blue. They're obviously vanilla. I think pretty much all vanilla vehicles are line colorable, but be aware not all mods are line colorable. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on set line, and then we're going to click on this new intercity town line there. Now hopefully this will prove me right. Let's speed up the game a little bit. Yeah, because I've put the depot in the middle of the two cities, the buses go off in two different directions. That's why I prefer to put it in the centre, because we're getting a bit of the unbunching done out, done straight away without any messing. If we'd say, for instance, put the bus depot here, all 4 buses would tend to gravitate to this, and then they'd have to do the work of unbunching themselves, which is going to eat into time. It's going to cost you money. So in the long run, or in the short term actually rather, putting it right in the middle does save time and money on unbunching, which just means your buses should hopefully be profitable faster. Let's just take a quick look. Is he getting up to speed on that? It's not a particularly long route actually, but he is getting up to a reasonable speed of about 50. There is a bit of a curve, so they may slow down a little bit for curves, but that is the most basic bus setup. But that's point to point intercity bus route. So there we are. Now, as your city starts to grow and you get maybe a little bit more money in the bank, you can start to think about putting railway lines between cities. It is usually the most profitable way to go. The faster people can get from point A to point B, the more money that you are going to make and the more passengers you can carry. Obviously trains have a much higher capacity in general than buses, and you can avoid things like this, like traffic. I've just had to upgrade this to a bus lane just to try and get around some of this traffic, but it's not ideal because you get junctions backing up and things like that, which can be a little bit of an issue. So with that in mind, buses still have a usefulness, but they just transfer to a different use basically. So I've got a train line here. This goes right to the top of the map because it's the high-speed rail map that I use to test high-speed trains and rail routes and whatnot. But we do have this station here. Now the station I've designed, it does have pretty good coverage actually, if I do say so myself, because it has the side entrances. It's smack bang in the middle of the city, and the city itself is quite densely packed. But maybe the city's going to grow, maybe the city's already grown out a little bit and started, the AI's decided where it wants to build. So what we want to do is we want to get these people on the outskirts who are not covered by the coverage map here into the railway station, and we want them on our trains basically. So the way to do that, the way I see most people doing it, and I'm not going to pass judgment, I'm not saying this is wrong, but in my opinion it's not the best solution. What people tend to do is they might do something like this. They'll put stations right around the edge of the map, and then what they'll do is they'll connect them all together in a loop. So they'll just go around like this, connect those up. Now connected that to a railway station, I want it connected to the bus station, and that does do the job. It connects all the dots together and it works perfectly fine. But there is an inherent flaw in this sort of circular route. If you're going from South Street, you go all the way round and then there, that journey isn't too bad. But what about the return journey, when the person comes back on the train, gets off, he gets on Victoria Road or maybe Springfield because there's an entrance either side. He probably will get on at Springfield, but he still has to go all the way around to get at South Street. Another problem is, let's say people have gone on at York Road, South Street, maybe the bus is full before it ever gets to Queen Street, so the people on Queen Street won't be able to get on the bus to Victoria Road. So another issue with this. The only benefit I think of this route is it potentially might be slightly profitable, whereas the route I'm going to show you isn't going to be so much, but I will explain why. I'm not really worried about bus routes not making profit in particular. Now there are different ways in which you can connect up areas to railway stations, and we're going to go back up, we're going to go up to the top of the map this time because I've already got some examples in place of different ways to get people into stations using buses. Now the method of getting people into railway stations I call a point-to-point service, which basically means the bus goes one direction. In this particular instance it goes quite a circuitous route, and then it goes back in exactly the same route. Now this is more realistic, this is how buses operate in general in real life. You know, they go from point A to point B and then back in the same route again. But there are two different variants which I use, depends on the city really. Some different city shapes, depends where the railway station is, but this one here goes all over the place, but it does have good coverage. You know, it really does pick up a lot of people en route, and the journey times from say Richmond Road and Mill Road here, and from Main Road anyway to the railway station are pretty good. So the journey out to catch the train, he's going out this way, and then on the return journey back again, the journey time should be identical. So It just improves the overall journey time, because the point-to-point entire journey time is important to people. So this is the fastest and most efficient, and it does do a lot of coverage for very little outlay, but you will make a little bit of loss. Now the next one is this one, which is an X, which basically I have bus stations in each of the corners of the city, and they basically feed directly into the middle of the city. Now this is a little bit more expensive, you're going to need more buses and more infrastructure, but it's a really efficient way of getting people into your city centre, into that railway station. Now we do have a little bit of an issue here. I just want to address this before we move any further, because we do have quite a lot of traffic building up and our buses are getting stuck, unfortunately, which is adding to the journey time. Yeah, let them bypass that traffic there. And there is a lot of traffic being generated. Get things moving a little bit better, I think. But yeah, these are the two ways which I use point-to-point bus routes, both point-to-point, but just in a little different arrangement. It depends sometimes if your railway station is cutting your city in half, perhaps this cross route is possibly the best route, because it connects people. Like if the city starts to grow down here, for example, or down here, you can get people fed up into the city centre, into the railway station as quickly as possible. But this works as well, but maybe perhaps the journey time from East Retford is a little bit too long, kind of going up in here, but it's still, in my opinion, better than a circular route, which isn't as efficient. Now if you look at the profitability of these routes, they don't make money. In my experience, I've never made a profit on my shuttle routes, but I don't worry about it too much, because what the idea with a shuttle route within a city is to get people from the outskirts of the city into your railway station, feeding into your rail services, which is where you're going to make your big profits. Now if we look at these services here, we've got two services, so these three services go to the far end of the map. On these two we have bus routes of different formations, basically connecting the city centres. On this one we don't have any bus routes at all. Now it's proving me wrong in this particular instance with this one without shuttle in that it's making more profit than the one with. But in general, I would say, like there's just dipped down again, railway stations, rail services with bus shuttles feeding into them make more profit, and quite substantially so as well, especially this one here. I think this is my best performing one. So each of these has two trains on this service, both identical length, 11-minute frequency, both identical, all three have identical capacities, the difference being that these two have shuttle services, this one doesn't. And in general, I would say railway services which have shuttles feeding into them make more profits, so that means you can afford to make a loss on these services, in my opinion. Some people may say I'm wrong, some people may be able to make profits on bus routes, maybe, but in my experience, shuttle bus services don't make money, but they're a loss leader and they feed into railway stations, feeding those passengers into those railway stations, which is key. Now on a shuttle service which feeds into a railway station, I always try and keep the frequency anywhere from 60 seconds to 90 seconds. I think any longer than 90 seconds and it starts eating into the journey time, because remember, waiting time, which is basically the time, and the frequency here is basically your waiting time in between buses, adds to their overall journey time for the entire journey by train, by bus. So it's just something to bear in mind. In my opinion, 60 seconds to 90 seconds is a good frequency for a shuttle bus service. That's not to say though there are just two types of bus services. You've got your intercity and you've got your shuttle. Intercities tend to make money in general and shuttles tend to make a loss, but there is a third type of service which I call a hybrid. I'm not sure if there is a proper name for it, but basically, as the name suggests, it combines the two different types of services. Now I've got two variants here, so I've got called this a long distance here, this one in green, express long distance, point to point intercity bus service. Now if we actually look at it in this one, we can see it's making a pretty good profit, not a massive amount, but it's making a relatively healthy profit there. 90% or over 90% full. We could maybe put another bus on there, but this basically goes from point A to point B. The type that I want to talk about is the hybrid service. So this is again hybrid intercity service, so it comes to this bus stop which is next to my railway station and then into the city centre, which has various bus links down to the airport and whatnot. But what this has as well is it has a bus stop on the outskirts of the city. So this, as well as feeding people in from, say, this city here over to here, to maybe to get a bus down to the airport, and similarly they can go from the airport to the bus station and onto the bus into the city centre. So it's serving two purposes in that way, but it's also acting as a sort of a shuttle as well, which is an added benefit. Now the only thing with this is you do need to make sure you do obviously have enough capacity, enough buses, so the buses coming in from this city aren't completely packed full of people before they get to this stop, because you can remember this is acting as sort of a shuttle. It only acts as a shuttle for 1/4 of your city, but it's still acting as a shuttle nevertheless. And in this particular instance, you can see here we've got a loading of less than 50% currently. This is your total capacity on the right, and on your left is your current passenger numbers, but we're still making a good profit. So the intercity element is kind of subsidizing the shuttle element of this service. So it's, if you want your buses to make a profit, then this is a good way to have a intercity shuttle and a shuttle within the city as well. And let's say, for example, you've got a city down, like a town down here and a town down here. You can have two interurban, intercity bus routes down here with like a bus stop there and a bus stop there, feeding into your railway station. So that again, it's doing dual purpose. It's feeding people from the outlying town into the railway station, and it's acting as a bit of a shuttle service within the city as well. So that's one way you can get your buses to make a little bit of profit. I think in general the straight up bus express services make the best profit. Now I am using mods on this, so I've got UK motorways with a top speed of 70 miles per hour, and I've got the Man Lion coaches which have a top speed of 75. So as I mentioned before, the quicker your journey time is, then the more money you make. So we're maximising the speed on the motorway, and we're using these Man Lion buses which have a good top speed. Yeah, I could probably do with putting another bus on there. The other one is, this is like the feeder one. This is a shorter distance, so we've got again an intercity route here which is a maximum speed of 60 miles per hour this time, and then we've got a hybrid service. Oh no, this one's the hybrid, sorry, with the bus stop on either end, and then this one is the straight up intercity. This journey is slower and is not as long, so the profit isn't as good, but it's still, you know, it's 60,000, 95,000. It's better than a loss, I think, and we could actually get away with putting a few extra buses on. We do have traffic, which is probably not helping profitability, but yeah, the different examples there. Obviously, the longer journey and the faster journey is going to make you more money, but you can do it on these shorter sort of journeys as well. Now before I finish, I think I've explained most of these bus routes. If you've got any questions, do put them in the comments below and I'll try and get to them as and when I can, or any suggestions. If you think you've got a better way of doing shuttles in particular, then do let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to learn from other players. But before I finish, I just should mention the capacities of the buses. Now the capacities that I'm using are different because we're using modded buses obviously, and there will be a link to a collection in the description below which will have all the different mods that I'm using if you fancy checking up some of these mods. But the Man Lion coach, which has a good top speed, has a pretty poor capacity, but this is set by the creator, so there's not a lot you can do about it. Despite that, it is making a profit because the maintenance cost is calculated by the actual game itself, so that's not calculated by the creator. So the way the maintenance is calculated is a combination of your top speed, I think the power, and the capacity. The capacity plays a big element in the actual maintenance. So if you take this Man Lion coach, which has a top speed of 75 miles per hour, the upkeep is only £68,000 a year, which is nothing really. Whereas if we go to something like this Plaxton Pointer First Glasgow, has a capacity of 44, only has a top speed of 52, but it's £185,000 a year to maintain, which is quite expensive. So it's just something to bear in mind when you are using mods. Now I've tried to balance this within the game itself. So if you look at the Maz 103, has a capacity of 19. This big huge bendy bus, which in real life would have a capacity of what, 70 or 100 maybe, only has a capacity of 26. So I guess the Man Lion coaches are relatively good, well balanced. But there is another bus on the workshop, which is the Mercedes-Benz Citaro. I've got some UK variants here, but the capacities are the same, capacity of 25, 26, which I think is relatively well balanced. Now I do have some of these buses, so I've got the Sataro C2 buses on here with a capacity of 25, did I say, making quite a good loss there, 800,000 loss. But you can, maybe if you want to, try to reduce that loss as much as possible. So on the other arm I've put on the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter bus, which has a smaller capacity, which is losing slightly less overall than the larger bus. So if we go to here, interestingly, what you can do, we've got this Mercedes-Benz Sprinter has a capacity of 14, or there's the real life capacity one, which is a capacity of 18. This little bit of a quirk, I guess, the Man Lion triple axle has a capacity of 14 also. So if you wanted to, you could use the Man Lion instead of the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, but I think these would look a little bit better on a shuttle than the Man Lion, and the Man Lion is a little bit more, well, it's quite a lot more to upkeep as well. So this one upkeep is 86, whereas the little Mercedes Sprinter 14-seater has only cost £71,000 a year. So there are ways to minimise your losses on shuttle routes using mods and whatnot. What have we got actually in terms of, so let's see, we've got the Sprinter capacity of 14, upkeep 71,000. And then we've got something, I guess, like the Maz, which costs £97,000 a year. So yeah, it is a little bit better if you want to use a little Sprinter just as a shuttle, or maybe something like the Sataro C2, which again it's going to cost you more, but has a slightly higher capacity. So there are things you can do to balance out the profits and losses of different routes. But as you'll see, the Man Lion, with its little capacity of 14, still can make a very good, very healthy profit on longer distance routes in particular. So there we are. I hope I've explained that well. There's quite a lot to go through, but hopefully the timestamps have helped if you wanted to skip over any bits that you weren't particularly interested in, or maybe you've learned something new, in which case that's fantastic. Or if you want to, if you've got another way of doing things which you think I might benefit from knowing, then by all means let me know in the comments. They're quite welcome. But I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I will leave you with this Mercedes-Benz Sataro C2 in the West Midlands colours. It looks really good, and like I said, there'll be a link to that in the description. Well, a link to the Steam collection in the description below with all the mods that I've used for this. But I'm going to leave it there for today. Say until next time, bye bye.